Hey, Elle, so good to see you again. How's your week been?
My week has been crazy, crazy. Well, actually the whole month. Let's be honest, it's towards the end of September. The whole month has, started out with Abby's 21st, and then it's just had family visiting, trips happening, all this sort of stuff. But there's also been, you know, I've been journeying with our eldest, with Jordan, through some loss, which has been really,
Okay,
yeah, it's been on my heart a lot the last week or the last couple of weeks.
okay. Sorry to hear that.
Mm. Yeah, so Geordie lost his one of his best mates. He lost his friend to he intentionally appears he intentionally well not appears he did intentionally overdosed, so he took his own life.
Oh,
And
gee,
yeah, so that's
so
been,
sad.
it's very, very sad, and he's the same age as George, so that's what, 24 years old. And
Oh,
it's been
yeah,
a really tough journey for George and his mates, and I don't know this young fella's family, but obviously it's been, a very significant
sure.
season for a lot of people. Um, yeah, so that's sort of, it's interesting, isn't it? You can have lots of good, fun, busy stuff going on, but at the same time have this other navigating season of grief and difficulty with people.
Yes, yeah. And so often that's the case, isn't it?
Yeah,
This sort of holding both at the same time.
yeah,
And realizing that even though you may be walking through a holiday of grief and loss and sadness, it's also okay to have those other moments of
yeah.
joy in between. Hey,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. And I was pleased that it worked out. So Geordie um, lost his friend, had to navigate how, the logistically funeral and all of those things, and then was able to uh, tack on to the end of all of that, all of those sort of moments, a trip with his dad and his brothers up north. So he was able to still have and unpack really what was going on in his heart. I think there's never perfect timing for anything, right? Like it doesn't feel like it ever works out, but it worked out really well that Geordie was going through this really tricky season, and it was already planned to see his dad and his brothers to
yeah,
help him
yeah.
on the other side. Yeah, so when I was talking to Geordie though, what really stood out to me and what, you know, I guess was impressed on my heart was George mentioned that his friend really had, he felt that his friend really had nobody. He had his couple
Okay.
of friends, but what he was going through, he didn't share.
Yeah.
And George sort of was able to say to me, I'm so lucky I've got my family. And it just got me really realizing the importance of connection and community. Like how,
Yeah.
and I know we talk about it, the media talk about checking in. There was Are You Okay Day the other day. Poor Geordie. That was his first day back at work. He walked in, it said it was an Are You Okay Day.
Oh
And he was
gosh,
like,
yeah.
no, I'm not okay. So he went home that day, poor darling. So we try to have these moments, but we sort of also realize there's still so many people who are not okay and yet don't share, or don't feel like they can share what's truly going on. And that's so
Yeah, and it's
sad.
interesting. It's really sad, and it's also interesting just what you've just said there, because I think it's a choice to connect with others
Yeah.
and to share,
Mm.
But there again, you said some people feel that they don't have that option, and
Yeah.
that is really sad.
Yeah.
But I think, in today's world, and this is what we know and we've heard so often, especially since the pandemic, that it is possible that you can be surrounded by
Mm.
um, people and be linked like on social media to so many people. I mean, we're so connected when it comes to things like social media these
Mm.
days, but one can still be so disconnected
Yeah.
in that,
Yeah.
because there's almost like it's sharing can be really, really superficial, and it's just all surface level stuff, but it's really those deep connections where that we're talking about, right? Where you
Mm.
can connect and share what's on your heart and
Yeah.
what you're struggling with.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, those superficial connections on social media are mostly about what's going really, really well for everybody else. And often it's not a true picture and a true reflection of what's really going on.
Yeah.
And I think people sometimes maybe feel like, oh, I can't share because everybody else just seems to have it all together, and I'm the only one that doesn't. And we know that's just not
That's
true.
not true. And there's a lot of assumption in that. I think as
Yeah.
as creatures, we just naturally have a lot of assumption, and we sort of fail to see that even on social media, that people can be having a good fun time and things can be going well, but as we've already shared, they could also be balancing a whole lot of other stuff at the exact same time. And we don't want to be in that place where we're oversharing all the tricky stuff all the time either, because that just drives people
Absolutely.
away. Like, and that doesn't help us to have hope for a better future and all of those things. But to realize that generally speaking, most people want to partner with you and want to hear what's really going on. Like,
Yeah.
I'd say
Well,
there's not many
in the
people.
flesh, you know, I mean, I know
Yeah.
you and I are talking over Zoom, you know, as we speak, but you know, it's those deeper connections.
Yeah.
People really do want to know, like
Yeah.
the people that know you, your friends, your
Yes.
family, people that want to be there to support you. Because I think as humans, not only do we have this desire to share and connect, or the need, it's a need to share and connect. You know, it's actually connection was one of our 6 core needs. But also on the other side of that, it's a wonderful feeling to be able to reach out and hold
Yeah.
space for somebody else and to say, look,
Yeah.
I'm here. I want to hear. I want to
Yeah.
know, you know?
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that phrase, hold space for, and there's been countless times where I've had the privilege to hold space for people that I care about, but it's amazing when other people hold that space for you. And
Yeah.
yeah. So I thought
Yeah.
today it would be really good to sort of talk a little bit about the importance of, I mean, we know community and connection is important. You've already mentioned it's a core need, but it's fascinating that it's so important, yet we find ourselves so easily isolating ourselves. Like, it's so
Yeah.
easy to just get caught up in life, just go do the surface level stuff, but then find ourselves one day feeling lonely. Like, it's easy to do. And I just thought it'd be a good conversation for today.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's easy because, you know, to find yourself disconnected again, because I don't know, it's almost like this brings me back to when we were in our coaching training and we were being taught about the 6 core needs.
Okay.
And it's almost like the interesting thing is, as human beings, our default
Yeah.
are often towards not very helpful ways of meeting those needs, you know? And I think we so easily can default to disconnection, or we can default to isolation, because sometimes it just is easier to keep stuff to yourself. And it's like our default way to be is to go, oh, shucks, this awful thing's happened. I'm just going to keep it in for a while because I either feel too embarrassed to share, or I feel like
Or it's too
it's
hard to deal
shameful,
with.
or it's, yeah, all those things.
Yeah.
So I think connection is something that we need to be intentional about.
Yeah.
I don't think it kind of just happens.
No, it doesn't, because like I said before, life is just busy and we've got to do things. We've got to show up for work. We need food on the table. We need, all of the day-to-day stuff. And so often we just sort of put things aside and we just assume we'll deal with it later.
Yeah.
And then we don't. And then we kind of realize we've got and what I've learnt happens, and what I see happening is that it gets kind of pent up inside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And then all it takes is one other thing. You know, one other thing goes wrong. It doesn't have to be bad. One other thing happens, and it can be a complete unraveling of ourselves, because we've got all
Yeah.
this trapped, I don't want to say trauma, but all this trapped emotion in our nervous system that unless we share with others or get it out of ourselves in one way, shape or form, but I would imagine that one of the best ways is sharing it with somebody, a trusted person. Unless we get it out of our system, it's trapped there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other thing that sometimes can happen, and I know for me certainly this happens when I don't share something. And I love, what you say, like the intention might be there to share, but we kind of say to ourselves, oh, I'll do it later when the moment's right,
Yeah.
And and so
Yeah.
in waiting for this perfect moment, in the meantime,
Mm.
I'm ruminating about it. And
Oh, yeah.
as it's going round and round and ruminating in my head, like I'm just creating this giant story about it.
Mm.
And often by the time it does come to sharing, I've made this thing, like really, really heavy and big because in
Mm.
the waiting, I've been ruminating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our thoughts, we're our own worst enemy, aren't we? So
Yeah.
usually we've done a huge disservice to ourselves by ruminating on it for way too long.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's challenging, right? Because I think the other thing and this is probably a conversation for another whole day, but there's also the whole, are you introverted or extroverted? And for extroverts, it might be easier to share
yeah.
because you're drawn to other people to share.
Mm.
Uh, but for introverts, that's probably the last thing you sometimes want to do
Yeah.
in those
Yeah.
moments is find somebody
Yeah.
else to connect to.
Yeah. I married an introvert. So for the first, we've been married 26, we just celebrated actually last week, 26 years being
Oh,
married.
congratulations.
It's
Yay.
that's a lot of years,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Well done.
Yeah. And for the first, I don't know how many years, my husband, so Aaron, he didn't share a lot of stuff because it wasn't his nature. But then he was going through all this stuff kind of on his own and by not sharing it, it becomes a whole lot bigger and you're not getting the fresh perspective that someone else can
Yeah.
bring to that partnership, to that train of thought. And so I used to spend a lot of time, trying to get it out, like feeling like I was pulling this information out. Now he shares a lot. I'm like, do we have to talk about this right now? Like, I
Ah,
don't want to know
isn't it
about it.
lovely?
Like, yeah, it was
Yeah.
so funny, the flip side. But I think you sort of realize over time that, two minds together is obviously a whole lot better, really, than one.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
hope
And
that can come.
I love that what you shared there, sharing with somebody, not only is it kind of a release valve where you can sort of get it out and
Yeah.
release some of that pent up energy, but definitely it can bring fresh perspective and help a person to see that, gosh, maybe I have kind of in my mind made this thing really big when somebody else, and just how wonderful is it when someone else comes along and says, but hey, you're going to be okay, or maybe it's not so bad, let's just talk this through.
Yeah.
And I think it's the wisdom in it is also who we share things with.
Yeah, we've spoken about that quite a few times, but
Yeah.
having your key people in your world, and if you don't have those key people in your world, we need to find them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
important to have people who can hear what you have to say. So I won't go into all of the struggles that Geordie had with losing his friend. Obviously, that was a really tough time. But I had a conversation with him in the early hours of the morning when he really wasn't coping. And we sat in that space and he said some stuff and it was hard to hear as a mum. And, if I had heard it and responded in any other way other than just hearing him and allowing him to speak, if
Mm.
I heard him to respond, there
Mm.
there would have been a problem. Because I
Yeah.
could have corrected some of the things he said, or I could have, but he just needed to release some thoughts. And I think
Wow.
what you
Yeah.
need in what we always need in our world is someone who can hear us without
Yeah.
correction, without just with love. I remember reading a book, I can't think of the author's name, but it's all about learning to listen. And it's just one of the most important things is for us, and we did it in our coaching training. It's
Yeah.
all about being able to just sit and listen and be in that space with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a tricky space to be in.
It is a tricky space, but at the same time, it's one of those things like, like for some people, exercise might not be comfortable or hard to do, but we also know it's so good for general health and well-being.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, connecting. It might feel uncomfortable or a bit tricky, and it's not the thing we want first most to do.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's so necessary for well-being, and it's so good for us. It's what we need. It's how we've been created.
It's absolutely how we've been created. It's absolutely how we've been created. I just want to, sorry, I've got something happening over on a screen beside me that's distracting me.
That's okay. That's okay. And that's the thing, I think being heard is just, there's so much healing in being heard. And I love what you share about somebody listening without offering advice or trying to fix things. And because that's not always what we need. It's just the sort of just to be heard. And I think if we are in a space of actually wanting advice, it's then being able to know who those people are in our world that do listen and are there for us. And we know that, we could sort of reach out at times and ask for suggestions or help or advice, and know that it's coming from a place of love and wisdom.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's right. And because if you know you've got your people, you've got somewhere that you feel like you belong. And we all have this need to belong. And we don't want people to feel like they belong only if they meet a certain standard or are thinking a certain way, or if they've got all their, that saying ducks in a row.
Yeah.
The need to belong is so important,
Yeah.
regardless of what we're going through. We don't want to be that friend who's constantly telling our friends all about our dramas either, because no one wants a friend who constantly lives in that space. But there is a time we need to share,
Yeah.
and we're supposed to share. We're supposed to be able to feel like we belong, and then have hope that we're not going to be in this space for the rest of our time here.
Oh, you really, absolutely. And I think the joy that we have in our friendship, you and I, it has been that we get to share, and we don't only get to share on the podcast, we get to share a whole lot off the podcast too, which is great. And I think what I've discovered in my, as I've gotten older, and that it's not the number of people, it's just a few quality people. Just having a few key people, and sometimes all it is just one other key person in your life that you can share something with, and share honestly, and without feeling the need to be someone you're not, just really be who you are and share. I think
Authentically
can make the
you.
world of difference. Yeah. So thanks, Al, for being someone I can share with. It's wonderful.
I love it. And thanks for being my person too. And I just feel, I do feel blessed that both of us have people in our world, but that hasn't happened just accidentally. And so I guess if you're tuning in today, what I would love for a bit of a take home is to realize that sharing what's on our heart and what we're going through is just so important, because we need to know we're not alone. We need to not isolate ourselves and ruminate what's going on, because we know that's just going to make it worse. We know that we actually, by sharing it, we become part and belong to a group of people who love us and are there for us. It releases stress in our body because we've gotten out what's going on. It doesn't change. The thing, I guess, for me, one of the key takeaways is that it doesn't necessarily change our circumstances in the here and now. the external circumstances, but it does something internally when we share. It does
Yeah.
a shift within us, and because it provides a greater perspective with the people we share with, we've got a hope for a better future. So I guess my take home would be, let's be people who people can share their world with, and hear
Yeah.
people non-judgmentally, and just really hear people, but also let's share what's going on. Let's be people who commit and to being part of a community where we can show up authentically as who we are.
Yeah. And I think also to have a moment, if you're tuning in and listening and asking yourself, who are those key people in my
Yeah,
world?
yeah,
And asking yourself just to check in, when last did I reach out?
yeah,
When last did we connect?
yeah,
What does that connection look like? And am I being intentional? Like I want to be with that connection or with
yeah.
those, few. Yeah.
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 And if you're not, on the flip side to that, if you don't have people in your world, well, guess what? That's why. So on my heart, a couple of months ago when we started to talk about this, something we're about to launch, Kath, was this need for
Yeah.
community. I've seen in the world a need for community. I see and hear it all of the time. There's this yearning, and people don't have the people in the world that they feel safe with. And so I was like, okay, what can Brave, Strong, and Fulfilled do about that? So, Kath, what are we doing about that?
Oh, it is exciting, Elle. So if you're listening, next week is when we officially open the doors for our community, our Brave, Strong, and Fulfilled community, where it's not only about hearing Elle and I share on the podcast. We've had a lot of you share that you've enjoyed, and it feels like, a conversation with friends. And so we wanted to create a place to invite you into our community where we can get to know you better. You can get to know each other. And so next week we will be sharing more of the detail about what is this community we're creating. It's called the Brave, Strong, and Fulfilled membership, and we are excited. We're very, very excited to have the opportunity to open these doors to you next week.
I am, and I'm so, excited to, I love what you like, we're opening doors. So what we get to do every week, Kath, you and I get to have this conversation every single week, and to be able to start including others into our conversations, into, some group coaching, and to do, opening up the doors to all sorts of exciting opportunities moving forward. And we're definitely going to talk about it more next week, but really it's about building community. It's about having a
Yeah.
space where we can come and we can share, but we can also learn from each other. And that, I think, is key.
Yeah.
If we're surrounded by, what's that saying? There's a quote, you are the sum of the people you hang around. I can't remember. I never remember stuff. But look, let's be intentional. Let's build a community of people around us so that we can, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just have the space where you feel like, we don't want anybody to sit and think, gosh, but I just don't have a space.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a space, and if you feel like, oh my gosh, but this is so uncomfortable to, awkward, how do I step into a space and I don't know anybody? We've got you, yeah, it might feel a bit awkward first time round if you join us on a group coaching call, but really once you've been there, you'll see, we're all the same.
We're the
We
same on
love a
the
good
screen,
laugh. We
off
all
the
select
screen.
together. And yeah, it just will be lovely to connect. So
Love
anyway,
it.
Elle, having said that, have a wonderful week, and I really look forward next week to sharing more with our listeners about the membership.
Sounds fabulous. Thanks for letting me share a little bit of what's going on in my world in the last couple of weeks. And thanks for being my person. All right, have a great week.
Love you, Elle. See
Bye.
ya.